You still think a woman respects caring, that if you're there, listen, help, and show concern, she'll see you as a man. You're wrong. The closer you are to her, the less she notices you, the harder you try, the lower you become in her internal hierarchy, because in her world, respect isn't a reward for kindness, it's a response to distance. A woman feels power, not in words, but in absence, in pauses, in silence, in the emptiness between encounters. She respects not the one who's always there, but the one she stands to lose. You can give her 1,000 signs of attention, but 1 minute of silence will be louder than anything you've ever said. While you're near, she doesn't hear. When you disappear, she begins to search. That's how the female psyche works. She doesn't respect someone who's available. She's drawn to distance, aroused by coldness, and fascinated by independence. And the less you explain, the more she tries to understand. Respect isn't born from your affection, it's born from your shadow, from your control, your calm, your ability to be without her. A woman instinctively senses who controls themselves and who is controlled by her. And if you're dependent, she'll test you. If you're free, she'll fear you and desire you simultaneously. Because for a woman, the fear of losing a man and respect for him are one and the same. This isn't romance, it's nature. You become significant precisely the moment you stop being needy. She must feel your absence the way she feels the cold after a fire. First she gets angry, then she doubts, then she remembers, and in this silence where your voice once sounded, respect is born. You're not taking revenge, you're not playing, you just don't need her approval anymore, and that's your strength. You have to understand, a woman never respects someone who puts her above themselves. She can accept your care, but not your dependence. She can smile at your words, but not at your weakness. She can be by your side, but only as long as she feels your autonomy. As long as you can leave, as long as you can remain silent, as long as you can be without her. Because the moment you stop fighting for attention, you begin to control the situation. A woman respects not love, but an inner core, not affection, but endurance, not words, but distance. You become a man for her when you stop proving yourself worthy of her love. When you simply live as if you no longer have anything to prove, that's when she first sees a strength she can't control, and this strength makes her respected. And now you must understand the main thing, what they won't tell you in relationship books. Attachment is a weakness that she senses intuitively. You can hide your emotions, feign coldness, keep a straight face, but a woman always senses where you're dependent, and if she senses it, she stops respecting you. When you're emotionally dependent, you become transparent. She senses it instantly in the tone of your voice, in your gaze, in the way you wait for her reaction. You can be silent, you can play indifferent, but the anticipation is still audible within you. It gives you away more powerfully than any words, and the more you want her to respond, the less she does. A woman senses where your need is, and that's precisely where she strikes. Not because she's mean, but because that's how the female psyche works. She's testing your strength. She doesn't need someone who dissolves in feelings, but someone who is capable of remaining true to himself, even in love. You may think you're showing her your sincerity when you open up, when you confess when you're trying, but it sounds different to her. He's already mine, he's predictable, he's weak. A woman doesn't respect a man, she understands completely. She respects someone who remains a mystery, someone who doesn't reveal all his cards even when he loves. Because secrecy is the only thing that holds her attention. You must understand, emotional need reeks of desperation, even if you do everything right. If you harbor a fear of loss within you, she will sense it. This fear forces you to write first, to explain, to justify, to wait for a response, and each waiting makes her stronger. A woman senses when you're hooked, and when she realizes it, she stops respecting you. You can't be her support. If you tremble at the thought of her leaving, you can't be a leader. If her every cold glance shatters your composure, a real man doesn't seek confirmation of his worth, he knows it. He doesn't prove himself worthy of love. He simply lives in such a way that love itself strives for him step away, not for the sake of a game, not for revenge, but to remember who you are without her, to regain your respect before demanding it from someone else. When you are able to walk away, you stop being dependent, and when you stop being dependent, She feels a man next to her for the first time. You can love but not belong. You can be warm but not soft. You can be attentive but independent. This is the line and strength, and only the one who has learned to stand on it is able to command respect. A woman respects not the one who rushes into her feelings, but the one who can weather their storm without losing his balance. She may feel passion for you, but if you do not keep your distance, passion quickly turns to boredom. She may admire you, but if you become dependent, admiration turns to pity. The fine line between love and the loss of dignity is inner independence. When you stop reacting to her silence, she begins to feel your presence differently. When you don't seek her gaze, she seeks yours. When you're not afraid of silence, she's afraid of losing your voice. This is the shift in power. You stop being dependent on her reaction, and she becomes dependent on your indifference. That's why distance isn't a game but a strategy, not coldness but a form of self-respect. You don't have to prove you're worthy of love. You have to prove you're capable of remaining a man, even when love fades. From that moment on, everything changes. You don't disappear, you become unattainable. You don't hide your feelings. You learn to manage them. You don't seek revenge. You reclaim your power. And a woman who feels that you are no longer dependent on her attention suddenly begins to respect you in a way she never did, because she understands that you no longer play by her rules. You have become someone she cannot control, and this feeling drives her crazy. When you begin to withdraw, the world seems to become quieter. You stop writing, explaining, justifying yourself. You stop trying to be understood. You simply disappear from her familiar circle, not demonstratively, but calmly. And it is precisely this calm that begins to erode her confidence. A woman feels not a loss of words, but a loss of energy. The very energy with which you previously fed her ego, provided attention, and nurtured her significance. When the flow of this energy ceases, she feels an inner emptiness, and for the first time in a long time, begins to wonder who is now in control of the situation. Distancing isn't a pause, it's a reset you take. Away her attention, and with it, you take away her control. While you were explaining, she felt superior. While you were arguing, she was choosing. While you were waiting, she was deciding. But when you retreated into silence, everything changed now. She's waiting now, she's searching now. For the first time, she feels the same anxiety you once felt. A woman doesn't know how to cope with uncertainty. That's why a man's silence is such a powerful trigger. You can say hundreds of things, and she'll forget them. But your silence alone will remain in her mind forever, because in that silence is her reflection. She begins to see herself through eyes she no longer needs. This hurts her more than any words. You must understand that a man's power lies not in convincing a woman, but in not needing her to convince him. When you stop demanding her attention, you become a background noise that she no longer controls. When you don't respond to provocations, she loses her footing. When you don't participate in her emotional roller coaster, she loses power, and then the reverse process begins. She begins to seek your presence where you once sought hers. She begins to remember, analyze, justify. You have become her inner question. You mustn't play. The indifferent true detachment is born from peace, from the knowledge that you owe nothing to anyone, from the certainty that your silence is not weakness, but a boundary. When you reach this state, a woman feels it in her body, because the energy of calm is always stronger than the energy of passion. You stop running through her inner labyrinth and simply sit in it, and now she walks around you. The world begins to work in reverse. The less you react, the more she thinks. The less you are present, the more she feels. The less you show neediness, the greater your importance becomes. Withdrawal isn't coldness, it's the confidence that you'll survive without her. And that's what makes you attractive while you're around. She doesn't see your value, but when you disappear, she begins to understand how much strength you had. Your silence becomes a mirror in which she sees herself without your light, and in that moment, what you've been striving for from the very beginning is born: respect, not a show-off, not forced, but an instinctive animal respect for someone who knows how to be alone. Because a woman can love anyone, but she can only respect someone who can leave when you disappear. At first, she pretends nothing happened. She plays it cool, as if she doesn't care, as if she's even glad that you finally gave her space. But it's a lie at first. A woman pretends not to feel the loss. Then she begins to feel it, and the longer you remain silent, the louder it becomes, her inner noise. She starts checking your phone, seeing if you were online, remembering when you spoke, how you looked, what you didn't say. She searches within herself for an explanation, because for the first time, she doesn't understand what's happening, and misunderstanding is worse than pain for a woman. When she can't read you, she loses her footing. You cease to be the person in her script. You become a riddle. She wants to solve you, transform into a presence that can't be controlled, but impossible to forget. She begins to remember you, not because she misses you, but because you've become an emotional void. She needs to fill your gone, but you remain inside her like an unanswered question. And then what you've been waiting for begins. She begins to respect you, not out of pity, not out of gratitude, not out of fear, not out of the realization that she's lost power. You must understand, a woman isn't one with gifts and words, she is conquered by her inner inaccessibility. When you don't need her, she needs you. When you don't explain, she fills in the blanks. When you don't seek, she searches a man who can disappear without losing himself, becomes a legend in her mind. She may be with someone else, but she will compare him to you. She may smile, but inside, she will return to your silence because in that silence lies her own insecurity. A woman cannot stand being forgotten. She can live without love, but she cannot live without attention. And when you stop feeding her attention, she begins to fight for it, sometimes hidden, sometimes open, but always anxiously. She may say that you are cold, that you are selfish, that you have changed. This is not an accusation, but an admission of powerlessness. You have become a mirror in which she sees her power fading. Now her thoughts revolve around what she doesn't have your presence. You've become an internal deficit, and everything that's missing always becomes valuable. That's how the psychology of attraction works. Loss creates respect, distance breeds desire, and indifference breeds dependence. You don't have to do anything you've already done. The main thing, you've stopped being available, and that means she's now emotionally connected to you more strongly than ever. And now you begin to understand the essence of power. Power isn't in being needed, but in being irreplaceable in silence when you can disappear without losing yourself. You become someone impossible to forget. She may not call, she may pretend to forget, but inside she's struggling between pride and desire, between anger and admiration. She may pretend to be cold, but inside she's burning because a woman always respects a man whose silence is stronger than her words. When you reach a state of inner silence, where there is neither anger nor expectation, that is true power. You no longer distance yourself just to provoke a reaction. You distance yourself because you no longer depend, because you finally understood respect cannot be bought, earned, or distilled into words. It is born of self-discipline, the ability to control yourself when emotions are in control, the ability to stay in your place even when everything inside you is begging to return. Detachment isn't flight, it's maturity. You don't leave a woman, you return to yourself. You stop being a reflection of her desires and become the source itself. You stop living in her reactions and begin to live in your own awareness. Silence is your new language. There are no requests, no excuses, no complaints, only your stability, your confidence, your resilience. And this resilience makes you dangerous because in the world of emotions, the one who is calm always controls the one who is seething. A woman can conquer a man with words, feelings, even tears, but she is powerless against his self-control. A man who doesn't fall for provocations breaks her habitual patterns, scenarios. He doesn't react. And by doing so, he breaks her power. He doesn't argue. And by doing so, he puts an end to it. He doesn't search. And by doing so, he forces her to search for him. That's how respect works. It comes not to those who try, but to those who control themselves. You must be like a stone in the storm. She may scream, cry, disappear, return, but you stand, you observe. You don't run after her because you understand that if she leaves, then she never existed. You don't prove, because the truth doesn't need to be defended. You don't argue, because the truth doesn't need to be shouted. You simply live, and by doing so, you evoke her strongest instinct, admiration. A man's self-discipline is not cruelty, it is love, purified from dependence. When you are able to feel, but not let feelings control you, you become the master of your space. You begin to act from abundance, not from need. And a woman senses this. She may not understand it intellectually, but she physically feels the difference between a man who asks and a man who chooses. The former evokes pity, the latter respect. You are no longer dependent on her approval, not because you have become indifferent, but because you have become whole. You no longer seek proof of your significance. You live for yourself. You don't seek attention. You radiate peace. You don't chase love. You become it. And a woman who feels such energy loses power but gains admiration. You must remember a man who is able to control himself controls everything. Emotions are weapons. And if you have learned to hold your own, you are no longer a target. You have become the one who decides, not the one who waits and then everything turns upside down. Now she feels dependent. Now she respects your strength because in it lies her security. You have become not just a man for her, but a guide. When you come back after you've disappeared, it's not the same you anymore, which she knew you are not going for her sake, but for your own. You don't seek forgiveness. You don't expect a reaction. You don't look into her eyes and ask you walk calmly, like a person who no longer needs confirmation of their worth. You've become different whole with an inner core, with an energy that cannot be broken. You were dependent and now you are autonomous. You were available and now you are rare. You were reactive and now you observe. And the woman feels it. She sees the same figure, but senses a different energy, mature, detached, confident. You stopped revolving around her and now her world revolves around you. She tries to bring back what was, tries to speak the same words again, repeat the same emotions. But everything changes. You no longer respond as usual. You don't catch her gaze. Don't look for hints. Don't give in to tests. You are simply present calmly like a person who knows who he is, and this drives her crazy. Not because you're playing, but because you've become unpredictable. You're not under control. You've become free. And a free man is a woman's strongest dependence. A woman respects only the one she's afraid of losing. And this fear isn't about your words, your gifts, or your promises. It's about your inaccessibility, your inner peace, your ability to leave and never come back. You're not threatening, you simply can. And this knowledge makes you more powerful than any recognition. Now your energy doesn't seek it, it chooses. You don't ask for love, you radiate presence. You don't run for attention, you become the cause of attention. You don't seek approval, you already live as if you have it. You don't manipulate. You're simply calm, and calm is a form of power that a woman feels with her body. She doesn't understand what has changed. You seem to be the same, but different. There is no expectation in your eyes, only depth. There is no request in your words, only fact. You no longer explain. You assert with your presence, and that's what earns respect. She may try to test boundaries, throw out remarks, provoke, but the harder she tries, the quieter you become. And in this silence, she gives in, because she understands she no longer controls you. You've become a mirror in which a woman sees her own weaknesses. You've become a reminder that strength lies not in reaction, but in self-control. You've become the man she can't forget because you've ceased to be predictable. You don't strive, you choose, you don't explain, you act, you don't seek love. You become its source, and precisely when you no longer need her recognition, she begins to see you as a man truly worthy of respect, because a woman's respect is born not from your love for her, but from your love for yourself. When you finally let go of everything, the pain, the expectations, the attempts to be understood, a silence descends within not emptiness, but peace. You no longer play love games. You no longer chase attention. You no longer try to prove your worthiness. You simply live. And in this peace lies something that women fear and admire at the same time. True male autonomy. It's not coldness, it's self-control. It's when your emotions obey you and not you them. When you are able to love without losing your head. When you can be kind but not weak. When you are able to feel but not become dependent. That's when you become the kind of man who is respected, even without words. A woman senses your state. She knows she can no longer control you, and that's what makes you attractive. Because in a world where everyone is in need, a man capable of being alone is a rarity that inspires respect, fear, and desire. At the same time, you are no longer dependent on her love because you have found the source within yourself. And now, any woman who comes near you will feel that she is not the center of your life. She is only a part of it, and everything that is not the center always strives to earn your attention. This is how power changes direction. Don't try to bring back the old. Become so strong that it wants to return on its own. Don't explain. Don't justify. Don't prove. Just move on calmly with inner dignity without noise. Your silence will speak for you. And if someone one day understands its meaning, then they are truly the one worthy of being by your side. Remember, a man who controls himself controls everything, not attention, not women, not the situation, but his energy, his reality, his destiny. And that's when you begin to live as someone irreplaceable. If you feel it's time to stop being dependent, if you're tired of proving, waiting, and explaining, start with the simplest thing. Step back, not out of anger, but out of self-respect. And then the world itself will show you who was there out of love and who out of habit. And remember, true strength is consistency, discipline, patience, and emotional sovereignty, because only a man who has mastered himself can ever command lasting respect.